The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
Companies like Coinbase are feeling the chill of crypto winter, with the crypto exchange recently announcing plans to lay off 20% of its workforce and reaching a $100 million settlement with the New York regulators down there. But just across the pond, what's the outlook? Joining us now from Davos at the World Economic Forum, we've got Coinbase Vice President of International Policy, Duff Gordon. Tom, thanks for joining us. So
thank you.
I did want to just address, I guess, a little unhappy issue, which was these layoffs. Is that having any impact on your team over here in Europe?
It's not having that much of an impact, but obviously when you have to lay off, it's always it's a challenging moment. We were sorry to do that, but we felt we had to right size, for the market conditions that we see right now. It's always really tough to see great talent leave, and we wish, the colleagues that did depart all the very, very best. But what we did was, we had to do, I think, to make sure that we were resilient for the future. So we now feel very confident about, the size of the company and the outlook for 2023. So a difficult decision, but one that we think was necessary, and also something that is not completely, strange when we look broader at the tech industry and also the finance industry. We are seeing some layoffs across the sector.
And you entered Coinbase at an interesting time. You said last June, earlier with me, and just before we got on here, you came from Credit Suisse to Coinbase, which is interesting. So, what is the outlook for 2023? Obviously, to make that switch, you were interested in the digital asset space, and we're pretty positive about it.
Yeah, I was fascinated by digital assets. I thought that finance was going in two directions, green and also to kind of digital and digital assets. I decided to move into digital assets just because I thought the future there was extremely bright. Clearly, we had a challenge in 2022. We had those three, difficult instances. We had, the Terra Luna stablecoin. We then had 3 arrows. After that, we had, FTX towards the end of the year. But in a sense, we hope that there's been some creative kind of destruction through that. We also hope that there's been an acceleration towards regulation, because I think there is now a sense amongst policymakers, and one of the reasons that we're here in Davos is to engage with policymakers about the types of regulation that we hope to see kind of through 2023.
What would that look like? What would regulatory clarity look like to you?
Well, I mean, we're hoping it'll happen at all sorts of different levels. So the G20 are looking at digital assets, the Financial Stability Board, but along with the IMF and various others. And we hope by the end of this year, under the Indian G20 presidency, to get principles that can then be adopted in a harmonized way across the world. I think that would be a great step forward. In Europe, they're far ahead, obviously, with the MiCA regulation, but they need to do some level 2 rules there. The UK, interestingly, I think are beginning to accelerate their kind of rulemaking in digital assets and crypto. The minister just last week, Minister Griffiths, was talking a little bit about how London as a financial centre needed to have crypto as part of it to kind of future-proof it. So that was positive. And then obviously in the US, we are hoping that there could possibly be a breakthrough either on stablecoins or crypto more broadly. So 2023 for us could be a real inflection point in policy, and that could be one of the things, a regulatory framework could be one of those things that helps to accelerate us out of the crypto downturn.
We also see that with Coinbase, they've really focused on expanding in European markets, with its countries of operations expanding to Italy, Spain, France, the Netherlands, and outside the EU, Switzerland, where we are right now. So as the European Parliament looks to pass comprehensive crypto legislation, you mentioned the markets and crypto assets legislation, MiCA. How will that impact European operations expansion, if at all?
We think it's a great step forward, MiCA. It doesn't enter into effect for another kind of year and a bit, so kind of midway through kind of next year. But what it means is effectively, you'll be able to passport from one European kind of member state across all of the markets. So a market of 500 million people, one of the biggest single markets in the world. And I think it's a good piece of legislation. Clearly, there are some things that we might have done slightly differently, but overall, I think it's a good piece of legislation. It will bring clarity and it'll bring certainty, and I think it will help people to engage with kind of crypto. Because we do think, and we've always felt this as Coinbase, that regulation will help with mass adoption as that generates kind of confidence for retailers.
And in your conversations with regulators, despite the crypto winter, what have those conversations been like? Are they a little spooked by crypto? Are they still open-minded about it? Or are they just reluctant?
It's a great question. I mean, I think there is, somewhat kind of reticence to engage, quite as much as they were. But I do think that the collapse of FTX and some of those other situations have put crypto on all policymakers' radar, and so they do still want to engage. And so that is the positive thing, and that's one of the reasons that we're here. But they are focused, of course, on issues that could relate to market stability, kind of market integrity, investor protection, because we do know that unfortunately in some of those instances there were people who did lose money. So rightly, there's a focus on making sure that we get those basic guardrails in place.
I wonder what your thoughts on, the Basel Committee endorsed global crypto banking rules to be implemented by 2025. The rules suggest that a bank's exposure to certain crypto assets must not exceed 2%, should generally be lower than 1%. That seems pretty restrictive for folks. I know Coinbase has a position on that.
Yeah, indeed. And we try and engage not just on kind of, crypto specific and crypto exchange regulation, but also because we want to support the ecosystem. So we did, think a lot about and deeply about that Basel consultation.
That almost seems like a retaliatory reaction to the crypto collapse.
I think there's a concern with policymakers about having kind of crypto move too quickly and fast into the kind of the existing financial system, and to make sure that that process is done in a very sensible and moderate way. And so they have, and they will apply quite high risk weights to banks that want to get engaged. But I think with the revisions, there were some revisions made to the final rules after the initial consultation. And I think with those revisions, it does look a bit better. And certainly we're having a number of interesting conversations with kind of banks as they look to kind of explore. So we are seeing, and this year I think will be interesting, we'll see more institutional investors getting into crypto, but I think we will see more TradFi banks also beginning to explore this space in more depth, even, despite those rules, which, perhaps could still be seen to be rather restrictive.
Earlier we saw Bitcoin over 21,000 US dollars. CoinStock is also taking off. Are we over the hump? Are we, over the bottom here? Is the near-term outlook at least looking okay?
Well, it would be great to have that kind of, energy and start to the year. I think some of that kind of bounce, certainly our economists and our institutional folks think that that's due a little bit to the macro. I think with recession fears and a softer landing kind of coming more to the fore, we have seen that kind of bump, but it is good to see. And I think, part of that hopefully is a recognition that this is a topic that policymakers care about. There probably will be guardrails promulgated at least by the G20. And so we're going to see a bit more mainstreaming of crypto. And I think all of those things are contributing to a bit more kind of optimism. And we hope that there will be, a managed further fallout if there is one, or kind of limited fallout from some of the situations that we saw last year.
Big predictions for 2023?
I don't make predictions. I just, it would be great if the current kind of trajectory kind of continued, and we saw at least a stabilization and an increase in prices. I think we will see that, and particularly as stablecoin legislation comes through, and we begin to see people using crypto more, and we move from speculation more into utility. And I think we do a better job as an industry explaining how we can really boost financial inclusion, how we can deal with a lot of the issues that have been kind of thrown at us. But I think, we're positive at Coinbase. Certainly we think that we've made some tough decisions recently, but we remain convicted, about the future. And, so we hope that 2023 will be a lot better than 2022.